They booked me into a motel, not even a proper hotel, just a roadside inn with a view of green and brown curtains and an ice machine that flickered outside. 2 nights before my graduation ceremony, the email arrived. Joanne, we've arranged your lodging. Mark and Leslie will be with us at the downtown suite. The limo picks them up at 9:15. That was the extent of it. No congratulations. No, we're proud of you. Just a reservation, confirmation, and a quiet omission. Mark, my older brother, and Leslie, his now fiancé, I believe, exemplify the kind of success my parents, Richard and Linda Whitaker, truly knew how to celebrate. He'd made junior partner last year at a mid-sized firm in Boston. Clean, traditional, and easy to brag about. Law school suits someone aiming to marry before 30, and he checked every box. Me, I abandoned pre-law sophomore year, opting for computational systems and applied business. I began building models and even ran a small AI pilot through a nonprofit incubator. My father, the last time I mentioned it, dismissed it as freelance tech dabbling after a mere 15-second glance at my resume, declaring it unfocused. So, the motel wasn't a shock, but it still split. I didn't ask for much, not even flowers, just to be treated as though I belonged. I checked in late. The carpet carried a faint scent of Lysol and cigarette smoke. The clerk inquired if I was in town for a wedding. I told him no. I stood in the room for a while, my suitcase still closed. My graduation robe, folded in a plastic bag from the campus store, lay untouched. No one offered to steam it, nor did anyone ask what I'd wear underneath. I pulled my laptop from my bag and opened the Athena project dashboard. The interface blinked. 6 new schools had signed up to implement AI learning modules in underserved districts. I scanned the data test scores rising, instructors requesting extensions, and a small note from a student named Maya in Ohio. I never thought I could build something smart. Thank you. I closed my eyes for a second. This was the kind of work I never brought up at dinner. They knew Mark's GPA and posted about his promotions, but they never once inquired how I managed to pay rent in a Bay Area zip code. They didn't know I'd been invited to a Department of Education roundtable next month, or that a board of advisors met with me every other Friday to review national expansion plans. I stopped trying to tell them somewhere along the way. My mother, Linda, had texted that morning, "Make sure your heels aren't too loud. We'll be sitting near the stage, and cameras will be on Mark." I looked down at my shoe-scuffed black flats. No one would be taking my picture anyway. Outside the motel window, a neon vacancy sign blinked into the darkness. The limo downtown would be waiting at the Marriott, likely with chilled champagne in the back seat. I would take a city bus in the morning, transferring twice. No one would be there when my name was called, and I was beginning to wonder if that might be easier. She arrived just after 7, wrapped in the same worn gray coat she'd owned since I was in high school. Evelyn Whitaker, my grandmother. She never knocked like a stranger, just a single tap, and then she'd let herself in. "I brought pie," she announced. The motel clerk had tried to charge me for a paper plate, so I used a napkin instead. I looked up from my laptop. She carried a small brown bakery box and something else under her arm, a thick navy blue object, its edges frayed with time. She sat down at the end of the bed, as if she'd done it 100 times, as if we were back in her old Michigan farmhouse where I used to spend summers constructing things from soup cans and stripped wires. "I thought I'd see you before tomorrow," she said. "Your mother told me you'd be busy, but I figured a girl could make time for her grandmother, especially when said girl is about to graduate from the top of her class." I smiled without responding. Evelyn didn't comment on the room or the faintly buzzing lamp. She didn't ask about Mark's accommodations. She knew, of course, she knew. Instead, she opened the navy bundle, an old scrapbook with crinkled corners and plastic overlays yellowed with age. Inside were newspaper clippings, printed emails, even a flyer from the robotics club I'd started when I was 14. "You think I wasn't watching?" she asked softly. "Every time they rolled their eyes at your projects, I kept these." She turned a page. There was a photo of me at 17, holding a state award for innovation. My parents hadn't attended the ceremony. Evelyn had driven me 5 hours there and 5 hours back. I'd forgotten how small I looked in that picture. "They never knew where to place you," she said. "Mark was easy, shiny resume, steady girlfriend, polished shoes, but you were too quiet to fit in their frame." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, not sealed, just carefully folded once. I made an investment in you a few years ago, she said. Took it out of Grandpa's savings. You told me not to, but I did it anyway. You said you'd pay me back. You already have. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single-page memo addressed to the Dean of Academic Affairs, listing the donor details for an upcoming announcement. She had signed where necessary, leaving the rest to me. You give that to him tomorrow before the ceremony. Tell him the truth that it wasn't just you. It was all those kids you've been teaching. That's who the spotlight's for. I was speechless, so I remained silent. I simply closed the scrapbook and placed it gently on the dresser. Evelyn patted my hand. They may never get it, Joe, but someone always does. That's what you hold on to. Before she left, she kissed my cheek and adjusted my collar as if I were 5 again. Then she paused by the door and added, wear something with pockets tomorrow. You'll want your hands free when the applause starts. I left the motel early. The air was cool, heavy with California morning fog, and the bus windows were still damp with dew. I had ironed my robe myself, laying it across the motel bed and pressing it with steam from the bathroom shower. It was as polished as I could manage. My dress underneath was an old navy sheath I'd bought on clearance the summer before. It still fit. Evelyn had offered me one of her brooches, but I declined. I didn't want to wear someone else's story today. The campus was already bustling when I arrived. Families huddled under white tents. Cameras clicked. Fathers in sport coats pointed at buildings as if they'd once walked those halls. I kept my head down, walking past the flower stands and coffee carts. Graduates gathered near the admin hall, caps half secured and nerves on edge. That's when I saw them. Richard, my father, was adjusting the cufflinks on Mark's shirt. Linda hovered nearby, fluffing Leslie's hair and brushing imaginary lint from her pastel dress. Mark stood tall in his robes, looking exactly as they had always envisioned him, polished, framed, easy to understand. I remained behind a group of students, watching them from across the lawn. They didn't see me, or if they did, they didn't recognize me, just another graduate in a sea of robes. I should have been accustomed to it by now. Still, I felt that hollow press in my chest, that old ache of being nearby but never truly with them. Someone touched my elbow. Professor D'Angelo, head of applied systems. He smiled. Joanne Whitaker, he said warmly. I hope you left room on your resume for one more line. I managed to laugh. That depends. Does Dean Weller's office still use 12-point Times New Roman? He laughed with me, then leaned in. You did good. Don't let anyone today make you forget that. I nodded, my throat too tight to answer. As we moved into the lineup for the processional, I caught sight of the VIP seating. My family was already seated near the front row, a center section. A laminated placard with Whitaker in bold sat on the chair between my father and Mark. I wasn't sure if it was meant for me. Probably not. A small girl, perhaps 10, sat in the row behind them, swinging her legs and clutching a program. Her mother whispered something in her ear and pointed toward the stage. The girl looked at me. I smiled. She waved. Then the music began. We marched 2 by 2, the line moving forward like a slow, deliberate breath. I maintained my posture, feet steady, head forward. I didn't glance at them as I passed. I didn't need to. I knew they weren't looking. I found my seat, second row, stage left, a good seat, but still invisible to them from where they sat. I held the envelope Evelyn had given me inside my robe pocket. It felt heavier than its actual weight. The dean stepped to the podium, welcomed the audience, and acknowledged the families. I looked around. I could name the companies that sponsored half the banners hanging above the field. Some of them I'd worked with, some had offered me jobs I never responded to. I scanned the crowd for Evelyn but didn't see her yet. She wasn't one for sitting still. I imagined her walking the perimeter, inspecting the setup, finding just the right vantage point. As name after name was read, polite applause followed. My hands folded, my shoulders eased. For once, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. Not anymore. I was just waiting for something to begin. The sun broke through the clouds just as Dean Weller returned to the podium. He cleared his throat gently, a small pause that silenced the crowd more effectively than the microphone itself. The usual rhythm of names and degrees had lulled the audience into soft attention, but now his tone shifted. Before we continue with the conferral of degrees, he began, we'd like to recognize a contribution made not just to this campus, but far beyond its gates. I straightened slightly, feeling the corner of Evelyn's envelope against my side. I hadn't spoken to the dean directly. Evelyn had handled that, but I knew the words she'd written. I'd read them 3 times the night before. Dean Weller continued, "Each year, we are fortunate to witness remarkable accomplishments from our graduating class. But once in a while, one of our own works so quietly, so persistently, that the scope of their impact escapes our notice until we finally take the time to look." I felt it then, the shift. My parents, 3 rows in front of me, sat up. Linda lowered her phone. Mark tilted his head. Even Richard, who had barely looked up since the start, raised his chin. "This year, Stanford University is proud to honor Joanne Whitaker, class of 2025, the dean said, his voice now fully firm, whose AI education initiative, the Athena Project, has reached over 28,000 students across the country in underfunded public schools." There was a brief beat of silence, the kind that holds its breath, then a wave of quiet murmurs. My name hadn't been in the program. That was deliberate. I hadn't wanted headlines. I hadn't even planned on walking the stage until Evelyn reminded me that sometimes it matters to be seen. The dean gestured toward the large screen behind him. A slideshow began, photos of after-school classrooms in West Virginia, a robotics lab in rural Montana, a night program for adult learners in Queens. In each, students were bent over laptops, girls in oversized goggles held microcontrollers, and small whiteboards were filled with scribbled code. Through her nonprofit, Joanne Whitaker has quietly partnered with over 60 districts. The dean continued. She has designed accessible AI curriculum for communities often left out of the conversation, trained hundreds of public school teachers, and established a replicable model now being adopted in 4 other countries. I could feel the air change. I didn't look at my family. Not yet. The slideshow shifted to a photo I hadn't seen, one of me kneeling beside a 10-year-old girl, both of us laughing at a misfired robot during a demo. I remembered the moment, but not the camera. And earlier this spring, the dean said, Joanne became the anonymous lead donor for our new College of Applied Futures, dedicating her support to inclusive technology education. That new wing, opening next fall, will bear her name. Applause began to build. I stood slowly. It wasn't instinct, it was choice. As I stepped toward the stage, the wind caught my robe slightly. My heels tapped against the platform. I felt each step. Dean Weller met me with a warm nod and extended his hand. "Congratulations, Joanne," he said, "and thank you for reminding us what leadership looks like." I shook his hand, but I didn't take the microphone. That wasn't the moment for words. Not yet. From the stage, I finally looked out into the audience. Richard was frozen, one hand half raised as if he'd been about to clap, but forgotten how. Linda held the ceremony program so tightly it had bent in the middle. Mark's mouth was parted, but no sound came out. I scanned further until I found her. Evelyn stood just beyond the fence between 2 photographers. She wasn't clapping, just watching, as always, like she had from the bleachers at every science fair they never attended. The applause stretched longer than I expected. When I returned to my seat, someone squeezed my hand. I didn't see who. It didn't matter. What mattered was the silence that followed when my family could no longer pretend they hadn't noticed. They waited for me outside the reception tent, standing in the narrow shade of a borrowed Stanford banner. Richard was the first to speak. "I didn't realize," he began, but the words fell flat, as if he'd walked into a room and forgotten why he came. I looked at him. "You didn't ask." Linda stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. "Joanne, why wouldn't you tell us? We would you?" I asked, not bitter, not loud, just tired. Mark shifted beside them, arms crossed. He looked down at the grass, then back up at me. "So, what is this? Some kind of speech? Some point you needed to prove?" I almost smiled. That part of him hadn't changed. "No," I said. "The point proved itself." They stood there, still dressed for someone else's photo. Mark's suit jacket still had a faint crease near the shoulder, where my father must have straightened it earlier. Linda clutched her purse the way she used to grip church bulletins when I wore the wrong shoes. Richard cleared his throat. "All this time we just thought you were struggling to figure it out." "I was," I said, "but not in the way you assumed." There was a pause then, not silence exactly, but something like a stretch of empty air where no one knows what to say because the version of you they carried in their heads no longer fits. Linda's voice softened. "We're proud of you." She meant it. I could hear that much, but I also heard everything she didn't say, the regret, the rearranging, the sudden search for new stories to tell their friends. You were proud of me now, I said. Now that I've made something you can understand. No, Richard said quickly. We didn't see it. You didn't look. That stopped him. Just a breath. But I saw it land. Mark finally spoke again. Quieter this time. You're running some program for kids, or something like STEM stuff. It's called the Athena Project, I said. It's not something. It's a school within a school. It's partnerships, training, whole futures. But I wouldn't expect you to know that you were busy reading LSAT scores. He didn't reply. I didn't expect him to. Behind them, I could see a group of faculty and students gathering near the press booth. Someone waved in my direction. The story was already moving on without them. I adjusted the strap on my shoulder and stepped back. I have another meeting, I said. But if you're in town tonight, I'll be somewhere worth being. Then I turned. None of them called after me, and for the first time in years, I didn't hope they would. The road curved along the tree line just before the lake came into view. I knew every bend, every slant of gravel. The wind coming off the water smelled like cedar and the screened porch, summers of my childhood. I pulled into the graveled driveway and parked beneath the old oak. The house looked the same from the front white shutters, chipped paint on the steps, roof slightly slanted over the north window. What they wouldn't see, if they ever bothered to look, was everything behind it. 3 years ago, I bought it back quietly. After a bank foreclosure notice showed up in a public record search, I put in an offer through a trust name. No one in the family noticed, or if they did, no one asked. Inside, it had changed. The dining room was now a workshop with folding tables and soldering kits. The back den had become a learning space. Whiteboards lined the walls, and books on circuitry and ethics sat on open shelves. The couch still creaked in the same place it always had. I walked through the house in silence, opening windows to let the lake breeze in. By 5 o'clock, they began arriving. Not the family, the girls. 8th graders from Flint, a 10th grader from Detroit who'd spent the last semester building her own speech synthesis module, a few teachers, some volunteers, Aaron, my program manager, who'd taken the last flight in from Seattle. They didn't ask what happened at the ceremony. They already knew. Aaron handed me a tablet with the latest survey data. The retention rates in Oklahoma doubled after we added the bilingual modules, she said. That idea you had about adapting training for grandparent caregivers, it's working. I nodded. Good. We didn't need a stage. We had a long folding table set with paper plates and sandwiches, and Evelyn arrived with lemon bars that somehow didn't collapse in the pan. We ate under the string lights I'd installed 2 summers, a battery-powered, soft yellow, woven through the beams like fireflies that decided to stay. One of the girls asked if she could show me her new prototype, a small bot that followed voice commands and lit up when it heard positive reinforcement. It likes encouragement, she said. I smiled. That makes 2 of us. Later, I stood at the edge of the dock. The lake was still, the sun bleeding down behind the far trees. No one had called, no texts, not from them. And strangely, I didn't feel like something was missing. The house was quiet now, but not empty. This place had once been sold off as unimportant. Now it held more than it ever did. I left a note at the front desk of their hotel, just the card folded once, slipped into a small envelope with my handwriting on the front. Dinner, 7 p.m., the lake house, no address. If they wanted to come, they'd remember where it was. At 6:30, I set the table on the back porch. Nothing fancy, just roasted chicken salad, a pitcher of iced tea. Evelyn helped with the napkins, folding each one the way her mother taught her. The sun was still holding low above the tree line when headlights turned in from the road. They came, not all at once, not saying much, but they came. Richard stepped out of the car first, looking around as if he hadn't seen the place in years. He hadn't. Linda followed, adjusting the strap of her purse, her eyes drawn to the windows glowing from inside. Mark came last, slower than the others, still in the same jacket from earlier. I met them at the top of the steps. Glad you made it, I said. They didn't reply right away. Before we went inside, I turned to Mark. If you're parking here, pull the car around back, I said quietly. The girls leave their science fair boards out front to dry. They'll be here tomorrow. He blinked. I didn't wait for an answer. As I walked through the screen door, I heard Evelyn behind me, speaking softly, enough that I almost missed it. You didn't lose her, she said. You just weren't looking.